Happy Friday.
Elvis has just left the building. Those are his footprints right there. Elvis has just left the building to climb up that heavenly stair. He gave away Cadillacs once in a while, had sex in his underpants, yes he had style. Bell-bottom jumpsuits, that's them in a pile. But he don't need them now, cause he's making Jesus smile. Elvis has just left the building. Those are his footprints right there. Elvis has just left the building to climb up that heavenly stair. The angels all love him, he brings them relief with droplets of moisture from his handkerchief. Cherubim and seraphim, cherubim and seraphim whiz over his head. Jesus, let him come back, we don't want Elvis dead.
Guitar solo.
The angels all love him, he brings them relief with droplets of moisture from his handkerchief. So bring down
Cherubim.
bring back the,
Cherubim.
all right, Ike. So tear down the foil from his hotel retreat and bring back the king for the man in the street. Oh, Elvis has just left the building. There he goes. Those are his footprints right there. Elvis has just left the building. He's up there with Jesus in a big purple chair.
That was an attempt at harmonizing.
Can you tell we rehearsed half of a time?
0.
That was fun.
That was
That was fun.
Hi, everybody. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Welcome to night 11
Woo!
of Zappadan. We are doing Broadway the hard way, everyone. Broadway the hard way.
Broadway the hard way. Is there any other way to do Broadway except the hard way?
Is it ever easy?
Well, he's gone, so hi, everyone. It's me now.
The legendary 1988 tour. Here's the album cover. This, to my knowledge, is not a publicity still from Frank Zappa's appearance on Miami Vice. I'm not joking, that happened. 1988, can you tell? Pastel, oh, how about this? Got that rectangular tie, rolled up jacket sleeves.
It's awesome. I like the pink pastel underneath.
Oh yeah. Well, let's look inside the gatefold here. That gives us a pretty big indication of what is inside this package. With a quote from the sitting president at that time, Ronald Wilson Reagan, "Facts are stupid things." With Frank being the arbiter of truth, the central scrutinizer.
That's almost as good as the George W. Bush quote that opens the movie Step Brothers.
Where families take...
Families is where our nation, it's like our nation finds hope where dreams take wing or something, but it's like ridiculous.
All right. So 1988 was a big political year as it marked the end of the two-term Reagan presidency, and the White House was up for grabs. And after a decade of U.S. imperialism, it seemed like they were actually at a crossroads to do something different. So much of the politics of the time informs this album, and boy, is it cool. It opens with Elvis has just left the building, a nice tribute to the personality cult, the death cult that surrounds Elvis Presley. Now, fun fact about us, in 2013, we traveled across the U.S. We lived out of our car and we traveled through 48 states. Among our stops were Tupelo, Mississippi, Elvis's birthplace, his
Mhm.
little shotgun shack, all 3 square feet of it, tiny little place,
Mhm.
and then Graceland, which we mutually agreed upon is what it looks like when hillbillies win the lottery.
Yeah.
Lots of cheetah print,
Lots of animal print and
a
plush.
lot of velvet, a lot of
Faux
velvet,
fur.
a lot of fur, and
Yeah.
a lot of shiny shit. But the song about Elvis, Frank Zappa was not an Elvis fan. When he first heard Hound Dog, he wondered who the hell was ruining his favorite Big Mama Thornton song. And that level of wokeness defines this album. It starts with Elvis has just left the building, which at first glance, it might almost seem like another throwaway novelty tune like Don't Eat the Yellow Snow. But given Zappa's awareness of black music and what Elvis did to it, it's not an homage. It's more of a kiss-off.
Definitely.
What's your take on it?
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of making fun of him being this like kind of like chubby, sweaty, gross, excessive figure
Right.
that people kind of fawn over. And I mean, Elvis is such a part of Americana, and it's kind of interesting that the rest of the album talks about, there's a lot of political discussion too.
Right.
And Elvis has been the favorite musician of a lot of presidents. A lot of presidents have noted Elvis as being someone that they really like. So I don't know if he meant to do that.
Elvis was a hero to most.
So I think it's a funny way to start the album, but I like it.
I love that that's how he starts the
Yeah.
album. It's almost like hey, I got to tell you a story.
Right, exactly.
And then it turns into, so what else is new with you?
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, on Wall Street,
Right.
then we jump to track 2, Planet of the Baritone Women. Frank often gets accused of misogyny, sexism in his lyrics. I have with me right here a female who can speak for 51% of the human race. No pressure.
Well,
What-
the first thing I want to say to that is I cannot speak for half of the race because
I'm mocking that concept.
I know you are.
Glad you know that.
Yes. But I just want to make sure that they know that.
Right. It's that tokenism of, oh, you're black. What do you think of this? You're
Right.
a woman. What do you think of this?
Mhm.
But here you are, a fan of Zappa's music, and it didn't rustle your jimmies.
No.
Why not?
Because I think he respected women, and there's another song later in the album that's about women again, and we'll wait to talk about that one when we get there. But this song, I think the first thing that honestly caught me about the song was that the music sounds like klezmer music.
Yes.
And I thought that was an interesting nod. My necklace is twisted.
Yeah, so that song made it onto the European cut of Strictly Commercial, The Best of Frank Zappa.
Mhm.
It's not on the American version, but then again, neither is Bobby Brown Goes Down. Interesting.
Right.
What do you think the song is about? They sing about wheat. They sing about corn.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't know.
It's about stockbrokers, and it's about the
Like the commodities exchange.
commodities exchange,
Yeah.
and that it's just another brand of corporate stooge.
Hmm. Where do you think the baritone woman, like what's a baritone woman?
Well, I guess the question to ask is, do you think there's some implication there?
I think he might be talking about men who act like women.
How so?
Well, a baritone is obviously not typically someone who identifies as a female. It's typically a lower voice register. And if he's talking about the commodities exchange or the stock exchange in the 1980s, it was predominantly male dominated. So maybe he's trying to be a little tongue in cheek with that. But I really don't know. This is kind of a confusing song.
We should ask an expert.
You should.
So the 80s was, of course, the decade of Wall Street, rampant capitalism. The movie Wall Street came out based on a true story of insider trading. This also was concurrent with post-70s women's arrival in the workplace and in top executive positions. Rather than being a fulfillment of Gloria Steinem's ideas that the female takeover in corporate America would lead to a better world, what happens is they behave just like the men who created the culture that made them want to become stockbrokers.
See, but I think he's actually talking about men.
So I was a little confused by what you said.
and
Do you
maybe
think
I
it's
wasn't
about
clear.
a transgendered person?
No, what I think is, okay. I'm going to preface what I'm about to say by saying that this was written in 1988 and that we've come a long way in terms of...
It's a 30-year-old album.
Yeah, it's a 30-year-old album, and we've come light years in talking about gender fluidity, gender identity, gender politics. So please know that what I'm about to say comes from 1988 and,
a far more cis hetero normative world.
Yes. So let's just get that out of the way. So he mentions in the song, he talks about like carrying purses and like making sure that your
men
legs
carrying purses
and like making sure that your legs aren't spread, which is like in office culture, traditional office culture, like for females, you're supposed to like always be wearing a skirt. So you're supposed to have your legs crossed all the time. So I think that what he was trying to write about, and I wasn't clear about this earlier, is he's trying to say that this is a culture where there are men who are acting like women in a traditional heteronormative sense.
That the Victorian morals that had been imposed on women are now going to be imposed on both genders.
Men are carrying purses and men are needing, like that's kind of what this culture is about.
Do you think it's a comment on political correctness? This one's kind of a head scratcher.
It's a total head scratcher, and we would love your feedback.
Give us your comments.
Yeah. I don't know if I think it's a commentary on political correctness, because I don't think Frank cared about political correctness.
Pardon me.
I think Frank used words in his songs that I would never say. So I don't think he gave a shit about political correctness.
Yes, and he was also surrounded by people where if they felt that he was doing something that might have been, I don't want to say off script, but perhaps more off point.
Yeah.
He was surrounded by black musicians. He worked with female musicians. He had gay people in his band. Someone would have said something about lyrical content. In fact, Frank was known to lampoon religion.
Mm-hmm.
He did have to have a heart-to-heart with Ray White over the content of The Meek Shall Inherit Nothing and Dumb
Right.
All Over, because Ray White was a devout Baptist. And he sat him down and said, listen, I love Jesus.
Yeah.
And I actually like much of Christianity. It's the hypocrites who are destroying Christianity that I'm writing about here. So if anything, these are the money changers.
Right. I think it's more like, these very white collar jobs are a little bit softer culture. Like, people sitting in offices all day, they're not working hard jobs, they're not doing labor. So I think it's kind of, that's sort of what he's saying, is he's talking about the baritone women are like...
I got so many bookmarks in here.
Yeah, this one's a total head scratcher. So if you've got ideas, send them our way. Did you find a chapter about it?
Ben Watson. So
let's hear it.
Haven't pre-read this. I'm just going to throw it out there to the universe. According to Den Sims, okay, blah, blah, blah. Zappa says Planet of the Baritone Women is about male Wall Street traders. Though this hardly seems to tally with the words. Here comes Ben Watson getting it wrong, possibly.
Okay.
The men carry purses wherever they go, junior executives all in a row. Watch the baritone women do the baritone show. They do choreography still more unique. They leave their legs open whenever they speak. They roll their eyes upward and over again and slam their legs closed when they sing about men. It seems more likely this voices the same sexual satire as Bobby Brown and The Legend of the Illinois Enema Bandit. Underclass resentment at feminism as the ideology of the new middle class.
Okay.
Whether it is men who seem like women or women who seem like men is hardly relevant. Indeed, the confusion as to who the song is actually about increases its unsettling power. Hey, we got Watson actually knocking it out of the park.
That's pretty awesome.
That's this guy's writing, though. The early 80s boom saw the expansion of opportunities for female professionals, just as it drew millions of women into low-paid, non-unionized employment. The song is about the hypocrisy of yuppie feminists of both sexes who equate progress with their own exploitative careers. They sing about wheat, they sing about corn, as Reaganomics produces poverty on a massive scale.
This song is like a masterclass in one song.
By the way, Watson, good work. Spot on analysis.
That's pretty
as well.
awesome. I'm glad I was on the right track.
Sometimes he blows it, sometimes he's on. That was good analysis.
That was good.
And also, totally on point with being a Marxist critique.
Agreed.
All right.
I think we can move on to the next song.
I mean, the dude's in his element writing about Wall Street. Any kind of pain.
Yeah.
This is Frank Zappa, the feminist. If there's any doubt, listening to Planet of the Baritone Women, and indeed, the ambiguity leaves it open to interpretation, certainly, but also equally certain is misinterpretation. The same thing happened with Bobby Brown. Maybe later I'll rape her. It's not a pro-rape song. It's about stupid men.
Yeah, Frank was never pro-rape.
Right.
The mention of rape is not inherently pro-rape. In fact, I think it's pretty brave that Frank wanted to talk about it.
That was 1979.
Yeah, 1979, pre-Me Too, pre-like anything that we have going right now that's...
Before, I mean, we don't care for her. Actually, we don't care for either of these ladies. Pre-Sarah Palin, pre-Hillary Clinton.
Right.
Before we had women in power. Before we had...
Well...
84, the VP candidate.
Chisholm.
72, Shirley Chisholm.
Probably my favorite person ever lived.
These still are beating hearts.
I know, right?
So any kind of pain is Frank Zappa, the feminist.
Yeah.
And he's taking a bold look at the expectations put upon women by men.
Yeah. And I think this is awesome. This song is so ahead of its time. It's a woman who was basically created by ad agencies to sell stuff. And we have so many of those still.
That opening verse.
I know.
It could be about Stormy Daniels. It could be about Melania Trump.
Yeah.
You were a girl somebody invented on Madison Ave. You were terrific.
I think it's just supposed to be about like any kind of like the supermodel. Like anyone who looks like that. You know, skinny, blonde, blue eyes, white, always white. You know, which is not what the standard of beauty should be in any way, shape, or form.
And it shouldn't be.
Right. This is a great song. It's super straightforward, but it's a really great one.
It is. There's a Lennon song, "Woman is the Something of the World," which puts forth the same message. It's 20 times more offensive because it uses that horrible word.
Right.
Unnecessarily so for the shock value. So what we have is that same message 16 years later in a much better presentable package. Musically, it is a very catchy song. I'm surprised this wasn't a single. This could have been a hit. Beautiful vocal delivery from the secret, not so secret MVP of this album, Brother Ike Willis.
God, he's my favorite
He's
person
your
that ever
favorite?
played with Frank. Yeah.
Frank had a couple of like right-hand men throughout his career. You had Ray Collins, you had Bozio, Ike was another.
He had so much talent.
Art Barrow was another.
I think Ike, there's something so special about him.
Yes. One of my favorite features of the 1988 tour is Frank and Ike had this tendency on stage. It was just this little game they would play of making each other laugh. And he leaves it on the record. He could have picked performances where they aren't making each other laugh.
I think that's sweet.
Very much so.
I like that.
So, Any Kind of Pain, beautiful tune. It is very straightforward in its point. So let's jump right into the much less subtle, difficult to interpret Dickie's Such an Asshole.
Dickie's such an asshole. What a good song.
Now, who is this about, Lex?
I had a kid in my 3rd grade class, and his name was Dickie. He was such a jag.
This is a revival of a 15-year-old tune from the Watergate era about Richard Nixon. And this version on the 88 tour is updated with more contemporary lyrics. Much of the song is still about Nixon and Watergate, but then you get lyrical references. Maybe if I invaded Nicaragua.
That part is the best part of the
you
song.
hear the audience erupt because
Yeah.
this is just months after Ollie North and the Iran-Contra.
Oh, yeah.
hearings.
Well, imagine a song today all about Trump. And
Even if
like-
I invaded Yemen.
Right.
Yeah. think about it. Not much has changed. We just have the internet now, so it's constantly on display.
Mm-hmm.
There's lyrics here about our government secretly invading countries, killing people.
Mm-hmm.
On the song Promiscuous, they talk about the possibility of disease outbreaks being the works of the Central Intelligence Agency, an idea that fuels much of his 1984 never realized musical Thingfish.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, Frank, a lot of these things that he knew to be true, like, now have been in declassified documents, and now we've, like, seen that they actually were true.
Like him knowing back in the day that Ken Kesey was CIA. They called him crazy in the 60s. That declassified report came out and he was right. Same shit here, singing about covert wars. This is Frank the polemicist, and he is making his points like the house is on fire.
Right.
And he was so connected to reality and what was going on in the world, especially in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
He was right, and he was, I think, among the first to truly smell smoke.
Agreed.
The next track is about the Republican Party.
Mm-hmm.
When the Lie's So Big. Pardon me. The title of that song itself is a reference to Joseph Goebbels, Adolf Hitler's
Right.
minister of propaganda, who said that the bigger the lie, the easier it is to believe. And as we've seen in our present reality, still true.
Yeah.
Sorry, Yankees.
Scary, but still true.
What was once amusing in the era of George W. Bush, when I first heard this album as a high school freshman, months after 9/11, was, oh, this is criticism of what's going on in the world right now. This is, but it also felt so long ago. But now it's not as funny,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, now it's kind of, and maybe, like, you know, we weren't alive back then. So sometimes I wonder if, like, yeah, they were able to make a joke out of it, but I'm sure to a lot of people, like, it wasn't funny. It was their reality.
Well, I got to ask you this: who today is filling soccer arenas singing songs about Trump being a Klansman?
Literally no one.
Right. This guy, Frank, is singing about Pat Robertson. Pat Robertson, the
Mhm.
host of the 700 Club. Surprisingly, not dead yet. Never underestimate the power of prayer. This is a man who has called for the assassination of world leaders. This is a man who also ran for president in 1988. This is a man who was close friends with the White House and also with the White House's pet stooge, Billy Graham.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Pat Robertson was as dangerous as Donald Trump.
Right.
In fact, those lyrics about imagine a televangelist billionaire running for president,
That's our next step.
swap
our
out
next-
televangelist for something else, like maybe reality show host, real estate magnate, banking executive, constitutional lawyer.
Celebrity chef. Reality star dog.
All right, we're gonna get to work on bringing Bourdain back from the dead.
You know what?
Bourdain
He would've made a
2020.
great president. I'm trying to think of all the most ridiculous 90-day fiance president. I don't know. Let's keep going.
All right. So next we then get Ryman Man. Was there more to say about When the Lie is So Big?
Nah, this is such a good album. It's kind of like every song is so good.
It is.
Yeah.
So after two songs critical of Democrats, we get Ryman Man. Frank was known to do this every now and again. We don't hear it often, but this is Frank venturing into country music territory. Ryman Man, tall and tan. Jesse Jackson was running for the presidency as well. In the song, Zappa accuses Jesse Jackson of capitalizing upon, at the very least, capitalizing upon the murder of Martin Luther King by the FBI.
Mhm.
Oh, did I say that out loud? His political opportunism, the fact that he would pal around with Louis Farrakhan, who is a very controversial figure, and then at the same time appease the APEC.
Right.
So he's calling out the hypocrisy. I think a lot of what is in this song applies to a lot of Democratic politicians. Hunter S. Thompson said something similar about Hubert Humphrey when he ran for president, that in a room full of teachers, he tells them his father was a teacher. In a room full of pastors, he tells them his father was a pastor. In a room full of rabbis, he tells them his father was a rabbi. Sounds like Bill. Sounds like Barack. This song is funny. It's got these cute little musical stings straight out of the Charles Ives playbook.
Yeah.
So there's some cute little musical excerpts. Any other takes that you have from this
You
song?
said it all. Yeah, I love that it is about Jesse Jackson. I think that's really funny. And I like that it's called Rhyming Man.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. And lots of people have said the thing about him. Not lots of people, but other people have said the thing about him being in on the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So something to read about.
Cleanse my hand in the doctor's blood.
Dark. All right.
Yeah. Frank was holding no punches. And so this is a guy who sang songs about dog piss. He sang about riots. He sang about some political things here and there, but it really is just like pull out the stops.
Mm-hmm.
Then we get Promiscuous, which talks about C. Everett Koop, who was the Surgeon General under Reagan, and I believe under Bush as well, and the possible militarization of disease.
Via. Yeah.
Google it.
Google it.
Next.
Just gonna skip over that one. Untouchables.
This is the theme song from the old TV series, The Untouchables. It just comments on the Reagan administration. It's just real quick. You hear the audience reaction to it. I would never just pull this up and play it on its own, but as part of the whole album, it's great. It reinforces the experience of the concert. My favorite thing about Broadway the Hard Way is they sound like they're having a fun time.
They do. It's such a fun album.
There's laughter. You can hear them smiling.
But I think that's really owed to the relationship between Ike and Frank, I think. For a large part of this album. Not the whole thing.
I think so. I also would credit it to some selective editing.
Yeah.
There was a lot of drama behind the scenes on this tour. The bass player was a jerk. And even now in the present day, he says really vile, racist shit about Ike Willis. So he knows who he is. Shame on him. Boy, bye. But no, seriously, because of that jag-off, the tour ended prematurely.
Right.
And what I think was Zappa's best tour, the pinnacle of his career as a rock musician, as a band leader, as an arranger of tunes.
Right.
And keep in mind, this is a group that rehearsed for like half a year. Their repertoire was double that of the original Mothers. Hundreds of tunes. For him to fuck that up, that really sucks.
That does
suck. It sucks to be Scott Tunis. You know, if you're ever having a bad day, you know, you can do just look in the mirror and say, hey, you know what? At least I'm not that guy. I'm not Scott Tunis.
Yeah.
All right. So then we get some instrumentals. Not yet. We've got one more socio-political thing, and then we have some jazz. Why don't you like me?
Yeah.
You want to get this one started?
I do.
I feel like I'm gabbing a lot.
So this one is about, it's very obvious who it's about because he's mentioned by name in the song. The song is all about Michael Jackson, which I think is kind of an interesting figure for Frank to talk about, but not in the context of this album, because he starts with Elvis, and then you have a bunch of political figures,
That's
and then
no
you
accident.
have Michael Jackson. So, you know, Elvis and Michael Jackson are two of the biggest musicians who ever...
One was the king, and the other was the prince.
Right.
Right. There's a lineage. There's a dynastic lineage here.
Yeah, so they're two of the biggest musicians that ever lived. But they both were like kind of plagued by that lowest common denominator.
In terms of fan culture.
Yeah.
And also dogged by racial politics.
Right.
1988, Michael Jackson was beginning his transition from adorable, doe-eyed black man to ugly, bony white woman.
Yeah.
I don't get it. I don't understand how it happened.
Yeah, I don't know. We definitely don't need to go into that on this.
No.
There's some body dysmorphia involved in something like that, but we don't have to go into that today.
Okay.
But
But the fact was, here he is, a hero to Black America, turning white before America's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, amending his appearance. So body dysmorphia aside, he still was a role model for millions of youth. And at no point did any of his handlers, his agent, anybody think, hey, we should intervene and help this guy who is paying someone thousands of dollars to cut his nose off and replace it with a piece of plastic.
Right. It's kind of interesting that they both died in similar ways, him and Elvis. And
Right.
Elvis died obviously before the song came out in 1977. And then...
So the other thing about the politics surrounding Michael Jackson is the commercialism.
Mhm.
Get me a Pepsi. Him having the zoo. You take the monkey, I'll take the llama. The racial confusion. The fact that Michael and Janet kind of were starting to look alike as Michael's gender fluidity started to express itself somewhat.
Yeah, his hatred of his parents.
Right. Frank was no stranger to writing about the exploitation of Black musicians, especially Black men, by the music industry. There's a track, Something Biz. You can hear it on the You Can't Do That on Stage Anymore. It's Ike and Ray singing about that kind of stuff. Of They promised me all the coke I could snort in exchange for this contract.
Yeah.
And it's nothing new. It's nothing new now.
No, there have been so many tales over the years of people who have been treated like crap in the music industry because they were a person of color.
Bessie Smith, the goddess of the blues, bled out because a white doctor refused to treat her
Yeah.
following a car accident.
There have been lots of artists that they've joined labels, they've gotten hooked on drugs, and the labels have just like supplied the drugs or
Sly
known.
Stone,
Yep, there's another person.
a brilliant mind ruined by drugs.
Yeah.
Handed to him by the music industry.
Yeah.
Hendrix.
So many. But anyway,
This is a book worth reading. If anyone's
is that
interested.
the Tupac book?
If anyone's interested in the subject matter of musicians and leftists
Yeah.
of color being exploited and erased, it's not a bad place to start.
I didn't know you had that on hand. That's a good one.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think in a way what happened. This is obviously it's about Frank Zappa, not Michael Jackson.
No, but it's the subject of a song.
Yeah.
He's still a large figure in American culture. He's the Pope.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
And in death, his most insidious things he did in life have been erased.
And I don't know if he had already been accused of pedophilia before the song.
That wasn't really until the 90s.
Okay. Yeah, so his most insidious acts were still to come.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So then we have several tracks that are more jazzy, more instrumental. What is the first one that comes after? It's Bacon Fat.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Frank Zappa, late in his life, said that someone asked him what his favorite tunes were, and Bacon Fat is one of them. It's this old blues standard.
It's one of my favorites too.
Did you know it before hearing the album?
It's really good. No, I heard it a few years ago, but on the album.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's a little lyric about going down to Washington, D.C., standing up to, censorship?
Mm-hmm.
And then they keep riffing on the idea of eating a substance called confinement loaf. What is confinement loaf?
Beans. It's like a bean loaf. So if you just like macerated a bunch of beans, which I'm sure are like really expired.
Well, more specifically, what was the purpose of the confinement loaf?
Oh, it's you eat it in prison. That makes you like drowsy.
You eat it in prison. That's what they feed you in prison. Missing from the CD, but present on the LP. And maybe it's restored on the 2012 reissue. I don't know. I don't have it. At the beginning of Dickie's Such an Asshole, Frank introduces the concept. He had just read in the news like that week that people in the U.S. prison system had developed a food substance called confinement loaf. It was given to unruly prisoners to keep them calm.
Mm-hmm.
And the punchline he had after that was, how long until they start serving this in America's schools?
Right.
What the fuck did they feed us growing up?
They fed us a lot of processed wheat and cheese, which
Maybe the occasional bean patty?
yeah, the occasional bean patty. But they also, it's funny because I read an article this week that public school lunches for children are going to get even worse than they are right now. That I guess they're about to get saltier and fattier, and so.
Makes you wonder if they're being fed to get into shape for something. I don't want to get drafted. Then we get Stolen Moments, a beautiful jazz instrumental. We get a lovely trumpet solo from Walt Fowler.
It's a pretty one.
Of the Fowler brothers.
Oh, there's so many Fowlers.
There's so many Fowlers. Bruce and Tom Fowler are in the band at this point. Wait, not. Bruce and Walt Fowler. Tom Fowler, the bassist, is not in the lineup. We have Bruce, the trombonist, Walt, the trumpeter. Wonderful solo here from Walt, the trumpetist. And then it segues into
Murder by Numbers, which has the craziest guest performance.
Mr. Sting.
Mr. Sting, who I would never have thought would collaborate with Frank Zappa, but it's really enjoyable.
Hot on the heels of Frank's anti-censorship brigade in the mid-'80s in response to Tipper Gore and Defense Minister, Secretary of Defense Minister Baker, his wife, starting the Parents Music Resource Center, PMRC, which was able to steamroll their way right into Congress to hold hearings about whether or not to rate records with labels in the same way that movies are rated. It changed into the what became known as the Tipper sticker, parental advisory.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, people were very concerned that this rating system, not unlike what we have on TV now, where you get these little letters warning you about content, violence, sex, language, drug use. The parameters for this censorship thing included religious references, drug references, and Frank said, would audiences be warned if a country album had Christian content on it? And what about reggae music that pays tribute to Jah? And so on and so forth. And then saying it's similar to putting the big yellow J
Right.
on people to label art
Mm-hmm.
and to make it censored. So Frank was anti-censorship. So hot on the heels on that, I think that this informed some of Sting's enthusiasm to play with him on stage. We've got the transcript here. But it seems like they met in the hotel, just like on his way to the show, just bumped into each other, Frank and Sting. Oh, hi. Imagine what that was like to just see that.
That would have been pretty cool.
But what Sting comes on and says is he wanted to play a song that 4 years ago, Jimmy Swaggart said that this song was written about Satan, was written by Satan. He said, well, I wrote the fucking song, all right? So it's sort of his chance to jump on the Zappa, like, stick it to the man bandwagon.
Yeah.
And they do a wonderful cover of a very creepy song. It's about poisoning people's soups.
Yeah. It's super creepy.
Yeah.
But a very good song.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Sting's great live. I mean, it's a live performance. So
He's a fantastic performer.
yeah, so it's good to see. You can kind of feel their energy even on the recording of them playing live together.
And then also, I mean, I was just reading today about Lennon joining Zappa on stage. It's kind of like that, where it's unrehearsed. They've maybe run through the song, maybe they haven't, and the result is still super cool. You hear a band playing a song that they're not familiar with, but doing it really well.
Right.
We get a song called Jezebel Boy, and that is about a gigolo.
Underage gigolo.
An underage gigolo, but male. Sort of a...
Isn't a gigolo only ever male?
Is it?
I think so. Gigolo.
This is almost a dark mirror of teenage prostitute.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next one. It's not my favorite.
Outside Now, which is one of my favorite songs.
Outside Now. This song first appears on Joe's Garage Act 2.
Mm-hmm.
This live version I like better than the studio version.
I do too. The vocals are really clean and beautiful on this one.
Ike is great on this. You also get pretty straightforward drumming by Chad Wackerman here, whereas Vinnie Colaiuta had this tendency to play around the beat. Here you get it straightforward, a wonderful long solo. And then instead of the song fading out, like it does on the record, Here you get a clean ending.
Right.
So that's great. It's a beautiful song. There's little to say other than go listen to it if you haven't
it's really
already.
Beautiful. And I do recommend the live version
For sure. Then we get
Hot Plate Heaven at the Green Hotel.
This is Frank being bipartisan. He eviscerates Democrats and Republicans alike, eventually settling to pick on the Republicans.
Right.
But it's about the economy, about the fact that it's a party, you're not invited to it, that it's two cheeks of the same ass, these two corporate controlled parties.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know what else to say about it.
Yeah, that's a really good way to talk about it.
It's a great song. It's a swing tune, which we don't hear that often from Frank. It almost sounds like a tune from the 40s.
Mm-hmm.
You can dance to it. And then we jump right into What Kind of Girl. Now, What Kind of Girl we first hear on Fillmore East. And we're taking note of the fact that we're 40 minutes in. And
it's a long album, but it's a really good album.
Yeah. It's a double album. There's a lot to say. I'm just thirsty.
Yeah. Have some water.
What Kind of Girl first appears on Fillmore East, which is one of my least favorite Zappa albums.
Mm-hmm.
Do not care for it.
This is the better version. Listen to it on this version.
Where the original focuses on a dialogue between a rock star and a groupie, and there's all kinds of fucked up implications with that. We don't really understand age. That's probably the big thing for me with the whole groupie scene, is these were teenagers throwing themselves at dudes in their 30s.
Yeah. I don't think I realized that when I first saw the movie Almost Famous.
Yeah.
And then she's like a teenager.
Yeah, so the world of rock takes on a whole new sick undercurrent when you recognize that many of these guys slept with underage girls.
One of them married one, didn't they? Who's the guy that married a 14-year-old?
Oh, Jimmy Page kept one as a slave.
That's it.
And then, what's his name? Whole lot of shaking going on. He married his cousin. 13-year-old cousin.
Classic.
I believe he's from Arkansas and is a distant relative of Bill Clinton. Oh, wait, no, not Bill Clinton. What's his name? Jimmy Swaggart.
Oh, my gosh.
He's related
really?
to Jimmy Swaggart. Full freaking circle.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Jerry Lee Lewis. Hi, Aaron.
Hey, what's up, Aaron?
Oh, my God. So funny.
So, what can we say about this? So rather than being this politically insignificant ditty about a rock star taking advantage of an underage girl, we have a song that I think exposes the Me Too movement 30 years before it became a thing, the real inner workings of our political system, and just our socio-cultural leaders as well.
Right, because this version is about a politician and a prostitute.
And an evangelist too, right?
Oh, yes, an evangelist, yeah.
With close ties to the Republican Party, while Ed Meese wipes his ass on the U.S. Constitution.
Nice.
singing Strawberry Fields Forever. Now, this song was part of a medley, which did not make it onto Broadway the hard way. Funny story, because Why Don't You Like Me was on the album.
Oh.
3 songs in the Texas Motel medley is a series of tracks. That's one of them. And then the other 3 are Louisiana Hooker with Herpes, formerly known as Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Louisiana Hooker with Herpes. Oh, and shit, what were the other 2? It's 3 Beatles tunes. The person who controlled the Beatles songs at that point was Michael Jackson. For some reason, Michael Jackson wouldn't sign off on Frank Zappa having an authorized release of Beatles tunes. So we just get a little snippet of Strawberry Fields Forever here.
Should we move on to the final track?
Yes.
I can hear Mo and he needs to go outside.
I'll let him out. Do you want to get a start on Jesus
Are
Thinks
you
You're a
sure? Okay, sounds good.
Yo, you want to go outside, buddy? Outside?
He makes this cute little whining sound when he needs to go out.
You know what? I think he missed us so much.
Oh,
You want to make an appearance?
bring him onto the vid.
Right, we forgot to mention that in the intro to Hot Plate Heaven at the Green Hotel, there's a doggy. And when we were listening to the album, my face is not in the frame at all. And when
Were you just lonely over there?
So on Hot Plate Heaven at the Green Hotel, there's a dog bark. It's a sampled sound on the
Oh
sync
my
clavier.
gosh.
We were listening to the album together. He sat up and just got the biggest smile on his face.
I think all dogs know each other. He's like, oh, that's my friend.
He
Yeah,
just
right
he
there.
knew the words. You know, it was being
You're the
said.
best. You want to say hi? Okay.
We're 45 minutes in. This has been our longest video. We've got plans tonight. It's Friday. We already performed a song. Mo made an appearance. How about tomorrow we'll talk about Jesus Thinks You're a Jerk
Sounds
and then
good.
talk about the next album.
Okay.
Because this guy needs to poop, I can tell.
All right. Everybody have a good night.
Arf, 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 indeed. You Florentine Pogan, you. Catch you tomorrow, Aaron. Thanks for watching.
Bye, all.